It works. That's what it was. Okay, figured it out. So I'm going to mute myself.
All right, we can wait for another 2 minutes and then we can start.
So it's 2 o'clock by my clock. I think we're ready to get going.
Yeah, we can start. We're still joining in, so they'll be able to see this as we progress. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today on this interesting webinar on climate solution for Kyrgyzstan. My name is Bujil Kondev. I work at the American University of Central Asia, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. My colleague Seth is joining us as well, along with three presenters. Seth will be co-moderating. Seth teaches classes on urban studies at AUCA, and with me, he's a co-chair of the Sustainability Task Force at AUCA, which we recently set up to develop a sustainability strategy for the university and advance sustainability and climate change issues on and off campus. So this event is part of these efforts that we have inside AUCA, and we're very happy that you're joining us. This is quite an important topic for us, and of course for everyone. I'm seeing people just joining in as well. We reached out to invite educational institutions in Kyrgyzstan, so we're expecting representatives to join. I see already that some of our colleagues in other schools and universities are joining. We have OSCE Academy joining, the University of Central Asia. What else do I see? International University of Central Asia is there, QSI, Hope Academy. So quite a few organizations that are like AUCA teaching courses related to the environment and beyond, and for whom climate is also relevant. So for us, this is great to have you, and we're looking forward to discussing, and after this, continuing the conversation offline and online probably in the coming months. But just to mention also why we're doing this, Solve Climate is an international initiative which we are joining. It's coordinated out of the US, and our colleagues at Bard College started it. The idea is to have a coordinated virtual teach-in on climate change and bring together people to discuss how we can solve climate by 2030. In parallel, so in the course of the month, events are taking place in about 50 campuses around the world, many of them in the US, but there are also universities in Europe, Asia, and Latin America joining in. Most of the events already started yesterday. some of the events kicking off. I watched one already last night in the east coast of the US. So people are discussing. There are about 60 people on the call. So very vibrant discussion about local issues on climate, state policies, and national policies. We decided to have this here and focus on Kyrgyzstan because we're all based here and this issue affects us all. So yeah, we are very proud to sponsor this at ACA and are probably going to continue this in the years to come. And just because the idea is to have Solve Climate happen every year in the month of April. But in between, of course, there'll be other events on climate that these universities that are involved now are going to host. So just wanted to share briefly on the goals for today's webinar. Of course, most of you know about climate change, heard and read a lot. The issue's been there for many years. The international community has been working on this issue with, of course, international policy on this starting in '92, so quite a few years now. Many of you probably heard about the Paris Climate Agreement, which was proposed and adopted in 2015. It entered into force in 2016. Kyrgyzstan was among the first countries to sign the agreement when it came out, but took quite a long time to ratify with national legislation. So this only happened last November. And we feel that one of the reasons why this took so long, of course, there are lots of institutional changes and institutional dynamics here. It's not one that's conducive of such things to move quickly, but one of the reasons why we think that this is happening is because also the awareness about climate change among the agencies and ministries here who are affected or should be doing things is quite low. There's little information on the impacts or on climate change in general here in Kyrgyzstan and Central Asia more widely. So with this, we're paying our own contribution and are trying to raise a bit more awareness about climate change. We wanted to show what other organizations are doing, what is happening, what are some practical ideas on how to solve climate change from both the perspective of reducing greenhouse gases and adapting to climate change. But we've reached out specifically to educational institutions, schools, secondary schools and universities, just because we think that there's a huge community of young people who are extremely interested in the topic. The ACA hosted a youth climate forum last year. We had only capacity to have about 250 people on our campus. We had 600 people who registered for the event. So we had to unfortunately say no to some of the people because we don't have enough room for so many interested people. So there's a very eager community out there of young people who want to do more. So we take this opportunity to share some of the expert knowledge and have three really distinguished speakers here with us today to talk about that. We also want to drive a process of making climate a class. Our colleagues in the US have been pushing this for quite some time. Of course, the US is a massive country, hard to push these things at federal and state level, but here for us in Kyrgyzstan, it's an opportunity to have a more constructive dialogue about how climate can be brought on into the curricula of organizations. We at ACA are doing our own effort to bring more courses and curricular and extracurricular activities around climate. So there's more to come from our side. But yeah, just to allow us to have a start off conversation about this, we've invited three speakers who will be with us today. Just briefly on the agenda, after I stop taking your time, we'll have the three presentations, one on climate change trends in general here in the country, one on solutions to reduce greenhouse gases, and one on adapting to climate. At the end, we have a Q&A session and an opportunity to discuss and raise some issues for further discussion. Who is with us here today from the speaker side? To kick off, Zoya Kretova. She's a climate expert. She's been working with the Kyrgyz Hydrometeorological Service for many years and is behind some of the modeling and analysis here that has been done in the country. She recently joined the Climate Finance Center under the Ministry of Economy. and has the position of a project development specialist there. Tatiana Vedeneva, she's the president of the Center on Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Development. Tatiana is among the few people here in the country who have a lot of experience with renewables and energy efficiency, has done quite a great job at setting up a center where lots of those technologies can be seen. She'll share some of her experience on projects and just demonstrate which are the technologies here that could help reduce emissions. Last but not least, Kanat Sultanaliev. He's a dear colleague of myself and Seth, and he's the executive director of the Shan Policy Center at the American University of Central Asia. He'll be talking about adaptation. So without further ado, I'll just stop sharing my screen, and I'll give the possibility for Zoya to load her presentation and share with us some information about climate change and climate change in Kyrgyzstan in general.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly well.
Thank you, Bojo, for so good introducing myself, and hello, dear participant. My name is Kretova Zoya. My main specialization is climatology. For more than 10 years, I work in Kyrgyz Hydromet, and my last position was the head of meteorology and climate division. Currently, I work as a project development specialist in the Climate Finance Center of the Kyrgyz Republic. Sorry. Some difficulties with my PowerPoint.
Maybe while you're setting up, Zoya, it's working now.
Now it's okay. Thank you.
Perfect.
So the main role of the center is support mobilization of climate funding and development and implementation of investment projects and programs aimed to the adaptation for climate change. The CFC was established in 2017 by the government of Kyrgyz Republic. And currently the CFC is a national designated entity for interaction with UN Climate Technology Center and Network. And also Secretariat is a designed entity for the working with the Green Climate Fund. This designated entity is probably, you know, Ministry of Economy. And third position, like main position in our country, the CFC now is the Secretariat, is a coordination council for the development of green economy and climate change. It's all about Climate Finance Center. And my main goal to present to you, for all of you, interesting facts about climate change, current climate change, and about what we are expecting in the nearest future. So first of all, I would like to remind all of you the difference between the weather and climate. The weather is a physical state of the atmosphere or climate system in the given point in the globe and the given point of time. But climate is the average weather for 30 or 40 years. And average parameters like temperature, precipitation, wind speed, wind direction. So there is it's very important to understand the difference, because many people make mistakes to speaking about when they mean about climate change, they speak about the change in weather conditions, but it's sometimes it's very big mistakes. So what effects on the climate in Kyrgyzstan? So the climate features in Kyrgyzstan defined by inland location and distance from the ocean. As you know, ocean is the main source of atmospheric moisture. And second, it's a location in a low latitude, which caused a large amount of solar radiation. And just a third reason, third features, it's a relief that forms a local circulation in Kyrgyzstan. So climate in Kyrgyzstan is very diverse. For example, measured extreme temperature in Kyrgyzstan is absolute maximum is about plus 44. It was measured on the north of part of Kyrgyzstan. And the minimum extreme temperature was about 54. That was measured in Aksai weather station that located in Narin region. So this complexity of the relief determines a vertical zonality with 4 climatic zones. First, it's a valley foothill zone where is located the most population of Kyrgyzstan. Second, it's a mid-mountain belt. It's like a zone of pastures. And third and fourth, it's like high mountain area, like Alpine zone and Nivelle belt, whereas located in the high mountain area, as I mentioned before. So many of you have heard that climate change is more characterized by rising global temperature. So rapid global temperature growth began in the middle of 17th, as you can see on the up graphs. And every decade became warmer and warmer than previous. In general, for Kyrgyzstan, the only last 20 years have been the hottest in the history of observation. In global scale and in Kyrgyzstan, the hottest year was 2016. And last year, 2019, was the second hottest year. The growth rate of global temperature and in Kyrgyzstan almost the same. The world it's getting in the world it's getting warmer on 0.17 degree every decade, and in Kyrgyzstan the speed of warming is 0.22 degree every 10 years. By the way, if you probably know, the rate of increase is estimated by linear trend, coefficient of linear trend. And temperature changes are not the same for the whole area of Kyrgyzstan. In some area, the temperature rises much faster. For example, in the large cities like Bishkek, like Osh, Jalabad, temperature rises here on 0.4 degree every 10 years. I would like to mention that for all weather stations that used in these studies, increasing of annual temperature statistically significant. In addition to territorial difference in temperature changes, there are seasonal and monthly features of climate change. And as you can see on these graphs, the warming during spring is bigger if compared with other seasons. The most interesting fact we can find if we see the monthly temperature changes. So you can see that that in these colored pictures, the blue one, it's a tendency of decrease in temperature, and then more red, the color it's means that it's getting more and more warmer. So in December, that located in the left upper part, is getting colder, and in July and August as well getting colder, in some area of Kyrgyzstan. Only we have a warming effect in the valley areas and in the east part of Kyrgyzstan. In other months, the temperature is increasing, but the rate of the changes is not the same for different months. So the highest growth were observed in February and in March. In March, it's incredible rising of temperature we have in Kyrgyzstan, and by the way, not only in Kyrgyzstan, in Central Asia as well. And in some points, we have a rise rate of warming is about 1 degree each 10 years. So we are losing March from our calendar. So a little bit about precipitation. Precipitation in Kyrgyzstan is characterized by significant variability. It's a territorial, seasonal, and interannual variability. In change of precipitation, unlike temperature, there is no stable changes as increasing or decreasing. Every year, precipitation was either less or more than a normal value. Sometimes much more, for example, like it was in 2015. But last 3 years was a little bit less than norms in general for annual. So in general, over the whole area of Kyrgyz Republic, we have a slight tendency of increasing precipitation. In winter time, we have a largest increasing over the year. And during summer, we also have increasing, but in not on all area, but in the most part of area. Interesting fact that in the Issyk area and the west and the east of Issyk Oblast, we have a decreasing of precipitation during summer. So when we look in each monthly changes of precipitation, it can be seen that each month has its own territorial features. For example, in October, it's like a middle bottom pictures. The most of Kyrgyz Republic precipitation became less in the eastern part more. In February and August, February it's located in the right upper part, and August a little bit down. It's getting during February and August getting more wetter everywhere in Kyrgyzstan. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about how changes in precipitation and in temperature affect on increasing in climate disasters. Increasing in temperature in February and in March leads to change in the precipitation phase. So it became less snow and more rain. And the precipitation, as it was mentioned before, in February increasing, and in some part of Kyrgyzstan in March is increasing as well. So all these factors leads to increasing of numbers of avalanches and landslide during spring. Increasing in temperature in the beginning of growing season in April and May together with decreasing in precipitation, even in some areas, leads to increase in evapotranspiration. Evapotranspiration, of course, leads to the drought, especially in the soil. That very sensitive, this process is very, our agriculture is very sensitive to the drought. So this is like a trend of increasing of precipitation, decreasing of precipitation, and increasing in temperature leads to drought. And the last example that increasing of precipitation in the western part during June, for example, and rising in temperature lead to increasing of mud flow and floods, because high temperature leads to the more rapid snow melt in the mountains, and also additional factors, increasing of precipitation, like liquid precipitation, and all this factor leads to the flood and mud flow, especially on the south of our region. According climate change have some examples on some climatic indexes that has an impact on the different sectors of economy. For example, in the health and our health very depend on the comfortable climate conditions, especially during summertime. And probably all of you remember during last July, we had so hot weather during July. It was just one huge heat wave. And I would like to mention that there is a tendency of increasing of number of heat waves, especially in the valley area. In the valley area of Kyrgyzstan, especially in the Chu Valley, in the Jalalabad, in the east part of Issyk-Kul. And there is some significant increasing of this amount of this heat waves during one period of year. And also we have some little bit positive effect of climate change in Kyrgyzstan. There is a change in growing degree days. It's like climate resource for growing some species in agriculture. So we have increasing of growing period. So probably we can have a new species, new type of vegetation in Kyrgyzstan. Probably soon we can plant even a banana, who knows. But climate is rising, and we should to find out some positive, not only negative effect. We should find opportunities what can bring us this climate change. So a little bit about future climate projections. According to two scenario of economic growth and scenario of emit of greenhouse gases, the increasing temperature will continue. And in the end of our century, the temperature will rise by almost 4 degrees. And currently the global temperature rise on about 1 degree, and we have all these consequences, like, you know, around the world we have so many disasters like flooding, cyclones, and so on. So it's became with 1 degree rise in temperature. But what will be in the future? If temperature will rise on 3 or 4 degrees, it's very difficult to imagine. So in Kyrgyzstan, we also made some scenario how the temperature and precipitation will change in the big cities of Kyrgyzstan. So according any positive and negative scenario of development of economics and emissions of greenhouse gases, the temperature will also rise, and especially during summer and autumn. But precipitation, as I was mentioned before, it's very difficult to even estimate how the change now. Some areas is decreasing precipitation, some areas increasing, and in the future we'll have the same. And there is a lot of uncertainties, especially during dry period and summer and autumn. We're expecting as decreasing precipitation as increasing. And in order to understand what does it mean climate change compared with the past and the future, on this graph you can see the annual temperature changes in the past and the future, the annual temperature. So these lines estimate climate. Climate is annual temperature. So, for example, in beginning of last century, the mean annual temperature in Bishkek was about 10 degrees. In the middle 30 periods, like began from 1961, it was about 11, and the last 30 years it was mostly about 12, and in the future, according to scenario, it will be between 12 and 14, and this is projected temperature is a current temperature in Jalalabad. So we are expecting that in Bishkek, in recent 30 years, we will have a climate condition of Jalalabad. So that is all what I wanted to tell you. I'm waiting for your questions. I will try to answer with great pleasure. And stay safe at home and enjoy this time. Thank you for your attention, and I'm waiting for your questions.
Great, thanks Zoya. We will have, please everyone, I forgot to mention, please send us your question via the chat box. We will have all the questions and answers at the end after the 3 presentations. And so while Zoya is turning off her presentation and Tatiana loading, if you have some questions, feel free to post them now to everyone so that we can see them and Zoya can start thinking about her answers later on. But yeah, we'll have the question and answers later. Tatiana, you're
switched on my own microphone, sorry. My name is Tatiana, hello again. And thank you to Zoya to such an introduction to climate change. I think it's very insightful. So first of all, I'd like to tell you a bit about myself. I represent Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Development. And what we do there is all services related to renewable energy and energy efficiency, like energy audits, in which we just monitor your energy consumption and then can tell you what measures you can take to decrease that. We look where we can put which renewables, we install them, we monitor and analyze their performance. We do research and adapt some technical solutions to Kyrgyz realities. We provide trainings, and also we are participating in policy and legislation development in Kyrgyzstan that's related to renewables and energy efficiency. Mostly our clients are development organizations, but we do have some private companies and household customers as well. What Zoya told you, what's going on, what's happening. I wanted to talk just a bit about why it's happening. Of course, there are several reasons for changing the climate. And here the black dots are global surface temperatures recorded since the beginning of recording in 1850. And this gray line is the average surface temperature of Earth. You see it's rising. And the different colored lines are representing different forcings in the climate change. For example, the sun is yellow. See, there is not much change there. Volcanoes represent rather a positive influence on climate change, so they cancel it. But here we have the greenhouse gases, the red line, and we can see that the average temperature change is actually following the rise in greenhouse gases quite closely. So what can that mean? The greenhouse gases and their role in the atmosphere is such that the energy from the sun is reaching the Earth, is radiated back. Most of the heat is absorbed by the greenhouse gases and reflects in all directions, warming the Earth more and more. It's not always a bad thing. Due to this greenhouse effect, we have a plus 15 degrees Celsius general temperature on Earth instead of minus 18. If it were minus 18, we would not be actually meet here and would not talk about climate change. But too much of it is obviously not a good thing. We cannot even predict what happens when we have a plus 4 overall change. So what are the culprits? What is causing the increase in greenhouse gases? Most of it is burning fuel to produce energy. This is data for Kyrgyzstan from National Communication on climate change, the latest one. So 53% of our greenhouse gases emitted in the process of producing energy, and 33% in the process of agricultural production. When we talk about energy part, this is basically producing electricity and heat here. Then residential fuel burning is responsible for 10%, road transportation, almost 17% of greenhouse gas emissions. And take fermentation, this is already agricultural side. This is the process whereby methane is produced in bellies of ruminants and enters the atmosphere as they live. So here we have to take measures as well. Agricultural soils, when you turn over the soil, when you're tilling it, you let out CO2, which then joins the gases already in the atmosphere and increases the greenhouse effect. Forests are the only good guys in here because they actually act as a sink for CO2. They actually absorb it and keep it where it is. So in order to discuss fully what we have to do in Kyrgyzstan, we would have to discuss these 6 things, like energy efficiency measures, renewable energy, green transportation, cattle management, sustainable agriculture, and woody and forest stocks. But due to time limitations, let's talk just a bit about energy efficiency and renewable energy. As for total primary energy supply in Kyrgyzstan, most of our energy is already hydro, so it's already green. Over 50% of the energy that we actually have in our mix is hydro. The other biggest part is oil products. And our use is mostly by households. This varies from country to country, but our specific is such that most of energy in Kyrgyzstan is produced by households, both transport and then by industry. So when we talk about consumption by households and let's say buildings, there are 2 types, residential and commercial, and the biggest part by far is consumed for heating, space heating. The second biggest part is water heating. Then for households, we have a lot consumed for cooking, and then appliances and lighting for both commercial and residential buildings. So let's talk about energy efficiency. So energy efficiency means producing the same work, the same services, the same products by using less energy. And it should be considered the first method to reduce human greenhouse gas emissions, because the less energy you actually use, the less to produce and the less CO2 you have to emit into the atmosphere. First of all, we have to talk, if we remember that the biggest energy we spend is for heating premises, what you have to do is, first of all, insulate. This is the first thing you have to do, not to lose any heat that you have produced with your energy. Here is the picture, for example, on the left bottom corner. This is a thermal. You can see that in between the panels, we lose quite a lot of the heat. So we basically are heating the street. When you insulate, not even with the expensive materials like mineral wool, but just the simple materials, natural materials, you can see how the picture changes and you stop losing energy through your walls. You can actually save up to 20 to 30% of energy just insulating. The second point I wanted to talk about is how to heat your house. One of the most efficient ways is to use heat pumps. This is not a renewable technology strictly because it uses electricity, but it uses it in a way which produces per 1 hour of energy spent 2, 3, 4 kilowatt hours of heat energy produced. How it works is the follows. There is a gas inside it, and it uses the heat pump uses electricity to actually expand it and make it colder. Then it is run through either air or water or ground to get a bit of heat, not much, 5 to 8 degrees. And then again, using electricity, it is compressed almost to a liquid state Through this process, from 5 to 8 degrees, it's heated up to like 60 degrees. And then we can take this heat and use it in our houses and return back to the process where it is expanded and then gets the low potent heat from the atmosphere and the process repeats itself. This is an example of a heat pump, air to water heat pump used in a guest house in Bokambaevo through the warm floor. It works for a couple of years successfully and has allowed to actually save quite a lot of energy. So let's come on to the appliances. Appliances consume almost 14% of total residential electricity consumption. And you know that in all of our houses, we always have some kind of old appliances. When we change all of our appliances now to the ones that we have on the market, we could already save 40 to 50% of the electricity energy that is used by appliances. When you are choosing the new appliances, please do pay attention to the energy efficiency label. This is what almost all appliances have now. And do choose something like A, level of energy efficiency A3+ now. It means that it consumes very little energy and you will be able to save a lot of energy while using it. Very simple methods while cooking. You remember that cooking for residential houses is quite a large chunk of energy as well. First of all, if you have a microwave, this is the most energy efficient way to cook your food, so please use it. Second, there are a lot of behavioral factors there to save, like when you want to have a cup of tea, only fill your kettle with the amount of water you need. And another tip, for example, buy and use a pressure cooker for cooking pulses and even meat, because it can dramatically decrease the cooking time of your meals. These are several tips that I can give you. As for the lighting, the standard used to be our traditional incandescent lamps, but they produce not only the light, they also produce the heat, which is actually wasted into the surroundings. So almost 90% of the energy that this bulb uses is 100 watt is wasted. Now, the light emitting diodes are expected to become the most widely used light source, and they use actually per lumens per same illumination, they use 5 times less energy. So do think about your light energy consumption and do switch to LEDs. Renewable energy. This is how we produce energy, and there are several types of renewable energy: hydro, bio, solar, geothermal energy, ocean and wind energy. For Kyrgyzstan, we would look only at hydro, bio and solar energy because these are the most prominent. In the world here, I wanted to show you that we only have about 11% of renewable energy in our energy mix. So we are in the very beginning of our process, even in the world. In Kyrgyzstan, you know, a lot of people, a lot of government officials, there are a lot of talk about hydropower. It's still starting in the development, but this is a really good resource for us because we have over 260 rivers that can be used for producing electricity, whether in large or small hydropower plants. These are just 2 examples of the plants that are working now, and some of them have equipment from 1924 still installed in them, still working, by the way. As for the cost, all the energy that we are producing has a cost of production. And so to install 1 kilowatt of hydropower costs about $3,000 US. For 1 megawatt, $1.5 million. And to produce 1 kilowatt hour of energy, about 2 to 3 soms, so that you know. And please do compare this with how much you pay now per kilowatt hour. Potential, there are different calculations available, but the latest one by the Institute of Water Problems and Hydropower estimates actually double our installed capacity and produce 4 times more electricity than we do now. We can. The most prominent one is the most traditional one, is just burning of fuels to produce heat, technologies to produce biogas for heat power production, and biofertilizer. This is actually a picture of one of the biogas plants which is being constructed right now. This is yesterday's picture. It's in Batken, and it can actually digest up to 2 tons of manure per day. and produce enough biogas to heat 200 square meters of rooms and quite a lot of biofertilizer. This is how it works. You take your cows, you have to have intensive livestock systems. You take their manure and urine, you mix them with water up to 92% of moisture content, and then you put them in the biogas plant where you keep it with conditions of no access. You receive two things: biogas, which is like 60–70% methane. You can use it as normal natural gas. You can use it for heating, you can use it for electricity production, you can use it even as fuel for cars. And the second product, which is actually more permanent, I think, is biofertilizer, which you receive in liquid form, and you can apply directly to your fields. This is the result of, this is the comparison of two fields. They're like 10 meters apart. We did this experiment in 2013. On the left, we did not apply any fertilizer. On the right, we applied biofertilizer. We grew barley, and we received here 3.5 tons and here 5.2 tons. So 33% increase in yield. And do please compare the amount of weeds here. So really good for yields, this thing. Potential in Kyrgyzstan is production about 15 million tons of biofertilizer. This is enough to provide for all of the lands here. And 270 million cubic meters of biogas per year. This is enough to provide energy for cooking for 15% of rural citizens. At the moment, the potential is only used at about below 1%. Solar technologies can be widely used in Kyrgyzstan. They include PV technologies that produce electricity and solar heating technologies that can produce either heat to heat water or air. So let's look at a couple of examples. Here's the potential for solar energy in Kyrgyzstan. The most potential we have here in the south, but of course these are the high mountains. We can't use anything there. So most of our potential in this is in this range, about 1,800 to 2,000 kilowatt hours per square meter per year. Especially here in Bishkek, let's say, we are not in the reds, right? But still, there is a good solar potential in Kyrgyzstan. So solar electric systems, PV systems, can range from a very, very small ones like this one. This is a 10 watt PV panel. It can produce, but they can provide an essential light to families living in Europe somewhere outside. Larger systems, they can be scaled up to, I don't know, megawatts, gigawatts, and they obviously do cost more. They can be used to pump water. You have to pump it, and we have installed systems that use solar pumps. And this one is in South Shore, actually grows about 200 tons of water per month when it's working. Solar water heaters, they use solar energy to heat water, and they range also from very small ones like 150 liters here to like 4 tons for large hotels. And they obviously we already installed quite a lot of them. The last example I wanted to show, this is more like a small fun example. This is a solar dryer. This actually combines two types of solar energy. This is PV. This produces electricity for a small fan here. And this is solar air heating. The point of it, you put your fruits or kurut or anything here, you cut it, you put it inside the dryer and point it towards the sun. Here, PV panel produces electricity, which drives the fan, which actually draws the air through your fruits and vegetables and dries them quicker than you would in the sun or in the shadow. So this is the last one I wanted to present you. Thank you very much for your attention. Obviously, there are many more solutions, but these are the ones that I wanted to see today. Thank you, and do please write your questions, and I will try to answer them.
Great, perfect, Tatiana. I see some questions already coming in, so we'll definitely have an exciting discussion at the end. While you're turning off, Kanat's going to load his presentation. Kanat's joining us via phone, so it might take a second longer to load, but let's see how that works.
How do I stop the demonstration? Wait.
Stop share at the top in the red button.
Did I?
I still see it.
I can pause it. I cannot stop it. Sorry. Oh. Anyhow.
Maybe when Kanat shares his screen, then it takes over.
Maybe let's because
Hello everyone. I cannot share actually screen because it says.
Now it should be possible, Kanat.
Now I can share the screen.
Right, showing.
All right. Technology works.
Great. Perfect. We can see it now.
Yeah. Hello everyone. I'm very glad to be part of this exercise, and I just want to thank Ojil and Ses for organizing this. I think it is very important, especially in the current conditions when we don't have many options for communication. So let me present you some information about climate change solutions and climate change activities on adaptation in Kyrgyzstan. So I would like to start from talking a bit about major climate change impacts in Central Asia and in Kyrgyzstan in particular, as was highlighted by a number of leading studies and experts. So majority of specialists, they think that namely these four sectors, water resources, human health, agriculture, and energy sector, as one of the most vulnerable in Kyrgyzstan. And that is why I think it is also repeated in government strategies and documents that they provide on climate change and on climate change adaptation. So here I listed some of the basic terms. Of course, you already, many of you already heard about them from previous speakers in their presentations. I just want to focus a bit on adaptation. Adaptation is basically everything that we do or trying to do in order to cope with climate change impacts. Whereas mitigation is more about trying to influence the balance of the greenhouse gases in the environment. So regarding the climate predictions, I think that we all have received very good information from Zoya already on this topic. I will not stop too much on that. And on climate change policy, here we have a bit interesting situation because currently our policy on climate change in general is being changed because the stakeholders were also changed. But the main strategic document that was developed in Kyrgyzstan on climate change adaptation was developed in 2013, quite a few years ago. And it was called Priority Directions for Adaptation to Climate Change in the Kyrgyz Republic until 2017. And basically this strategy highlighted 6 major sectors. Many of them were already highlighted before in my previous slide. So namely water resources, agriculture, energy, emergencies, human health, and forests and biodiversity. And the updating of this adaptation strategy is currently in progress, and with the support from international organizations, and also the main institutional bodies responsible for climate change adaptation policy in Kyrgyzstan are Ministry of Economy, State Agency for Environmental Protection and Forestry, and Climate Finance Center. This is the status quo for now. And on adaptation, a couple of years ago, we did an overview of ongoing and recently accomplished projects at AECA. We tried to look at what projects on adaptation we're doing, so that we could understand what are the most popular, let's say, topics and activities, and maybe there are some gaps. And we have conducted several workshops, and we have met with some international organizations and experts. And our overview, it gave us the following results on water resources sector, for example, that such activities as rehabilitation of existing and construction of new water facilities. It was mentioned in several projects. Also, topic of preservation and in general protection of river runoff formation zone. It was also quite popular among our international organizations and donors. Also, of course, capacity building and awareness raising about qualitative and quantitative status of water resources. And of course, being a mountainous upstream country, of course, the topic of international cooperation on transboundary waters and rivers was also quite a popular topic in the activities on climate change adaptation among the projects. In agricultural sector, it's a bit specific because so far not much is being done on climate change adaptation in agricultural sector. Those activities that we identified are listed here. So they refer to optimization of agriculture production, introduction of some drought and salt resisting crops. I think it's a very interesting and important activity. Also, since majority of our country is covered by mountains, and that's why we have a lot of pastures. We have many pasture-related projects, and of course, those projects they more focused on sustainable rangeland management and cattle breeding. The third sector that we also covered in our overview was energy sector. And here the majority of activities were about energy efficiency and also development and promotion of renewable energy generation capacities, and in general, renewable energy sources. So our general observations from this overviews that we conducted was that currently a lot of adaptation activities are already going on and taking place in various places all over the country by various international organizations. But anyway, the strongest and the biggest attention of the government is still kept with two sectors, namely with water sector and agriculture. And why not energy sector? I think energy sector is very resource intensive in terms of finance, and that's why not many projects could really effectively work in that sector because it requires really substantial investments. Also, we have identified some gaps in adaptation activities, especially with regard to such sectors as areas such transport, sustainable transport, I mean, cities and private sector. I think in Kyrgyzstan, involvement of private sector was very, very limited, but still there were some activities identified. Next part of my presentation, I wanted to share with you some experiences from our university. AECA was involved in the implementation of climate change adaptation project together with consortium of other partners from Europe and Central Asia. And our component of the project was focused on Chui Valley. And in Chui Valley, we have conducted focus group discussions and consultations with leading experts in rural development and water management sector to identify the most vulnerable, let's say, communities and locations. We have identified three villages: Boroldoi in the east, in Kemin, Kichikemin Valley, then Kuntu, it's a village near Bishkek, and the third village was named Oyrandi, and it was located in the west part of Chui Valley. Also, during our consultations with experts, we have identified the areas most prone to droughts and to flood threats in Chui Valley. And as you can see, Oyrandi and Boroldoi, they are quite close to those vulnerable areas. In our project, we have collaborated with United Nations University campus in Germany, in Bonn. And together with them, we have conducted a vulnerability assessment of these three communities and in general of Chui Valley. And we did it in three phases. At the first stage, we have conducted focus group discussions and meetings at the American University of Central Asia. And also we met with a number of development partners like UNDP, World Bank, and other organizations, and with some NGOs that were actively working in this area, like Camp Plateau, Unison, etc. Also, we have selected several students who were later helping our team of experts in the fieldworks in these three villages of Chui province. And our students, they really were very much involved into conducting of surveys, and in particular, they helped us to accomplish 139 interviews with village households. And at the third stage, our students were involved into the interpretation process. So they were filling out the tables and some Excel tables, Excel sheets. So upon this activities, we have received some
Not, we are losing your sound.
Information. So yeah.
Kanat, we are losing your sound the last 30 seconds or so. Maybe you could repeat if the sound comes back. Oops, I broke it.
If there's some connection issue.
Yeah. Can you hear us, Kanat? Did he drop off?
Yeah, I don't see him online, so maybe he's just dropped off.
Maybe take a question.
Yeah, maybe we can take a question or two. Maybe I can start. I'll just share my screen and the presentation from before. I added the first couple of questions here in the presentation. Let me just add that. Can you see them now? There we go.
We can see it now.
Okay, perfect. The first, I've just put slides with 3 questions each. So the first 3 came during the Zoya's presentation. I don't know, Zoya, if you want to start with the first one, and then we'll see if Kanat joins in. We can just let him finish his presentation. But as we're already past 3 o'clock, maybe it'll be good to just start with the question and answers and see if we can finish with Kanat's presentation.
I don't see Zoya here actually.
There she is.
I'm not sure if she can.
I'm here. So first question is for me, as I understood.
Yes.
So as I know, 2016 was the hottest year because of the, maybe you know, there is a famous circulation process called El Niño. It's like, you can read it, you can get more information on the internet because you need a lot of time in order to describe all this process. But it's like evidence that there is a big connection with heating effect all over the world, which depended of this circulation called El Niño. And I also can say that in Bishkek, in Kyrgyzstan, in general, 2016 was the hottest year because of the March. In those March, the temperature was above the norm on 5 degrees. Can you imagine, on 5 degrees? So that is why all this year was, of course, above the norm. And in 2019, again, the March and was above the norm on about 2.5 degrees, and July. These 2 months is like was a reason of like high annual temperature. I hope I answered all your questions. That is all from my side. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Maybe the second question, I don't know if you, Tatiana, would like to take it?
Whether we can already see any impact of climate change
on hydropower.
At the moment, it's more like it's not the climate change yet, but we see the variability obviously impacts our the amount of energy that we can produce with hydropower plants, either large or small. So this is some part of it is better addressed to Zoya, but as far as I understand that the water will increase up to about 2050, and then there should be a decrease in water. So now we are sort of okay on the energy side, but then in about 30 years we'll run into big problems there. I hope that's answered the question.
Zoya, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would like to add one information. The biggest source of our water is snow melt. Not only glaciers that are going to be melt soon, but also we are depend strongly from the winter snow. For example, you probably everybody know that this winter was very dry, and we didn't collect, our country didn't collect enough snow that can be melt and bring water to our main river and our main reservoir in order to produce electricity. So if we are very depending on seasonal precipitation, and in the future, according all scenario, according all climate prediction, we will have a lot of uncertainties. So again, some year will be wet, some year will be dry, and we should be ready on all these uncertainties. That's all.
Bojil, Kanat is back.
Great, Kanat, I'll stop sharing if you want to finish the presentation, but just let us know how your connections, in case you're having trouble, maybe we can just continue with the questions. Just let us know.
Yeah, my connection seems okay. Sorry for interruption. Yeah.
You want to hold it up again? Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And then we'll go back to the questions after.
So, yeah, I will just quickly finish my presentation. Among these three villages, we have selected Boroldoy village in Kichikimin region. And in this village, we have conducted two micro projects. Here on the slide, you can see, the yellow circle is the place where we have installed the pump station to help people to get an access to clean drinking water, because before that, people had to go to other village to get drinking water. And the second, again, it was part of this drinking water micro project. We also helped to re-establish or restore the water reservoir for keeping the clean drinking water. And also they had a problem with spring floods, and with the help of our project funds, we were able to construct an earthen dam, so that to protect the shore of the river in their village. So let me briefly give you information about these two micro projects and their results. As I said, for more than 25 years, residents of the Boroldoy village were deprived of the access to clean drinking water, and they had to look for the drinking water elsewhere. And that's why it was actually a reason of quite significant population outflow from the village. And then with the help of our project, we have installed the new well water pump for more reliable provision of the water. We also renovated the pump station and installed the transit pump for moving the artesian water from this big well into the water reservoir. And also we helped to improve and to maintain the water distribution system, piping system. And I can say that the result of this micro project on water was very big, because until this day, I have a contact with the head of that village, and he says that a lot of young families returned to the village, because now they see that it is much more convenient and, to live in the village now than it was a few years ago. Then a second micro project was about shore protection, and basically what we did, we helped to construct this 600 meters long and 2 meters high earthen dam, which was constructed to protect the river bank. And on that river bank, I will show you the picture. Yeah, here it is. You can see that a number of cattle yards were located, and also there was a path to the pastures going along this river bank. So it was quite important for the community to keep it protected, this bank. Then also some pictures. These are some pictures from Boroldoy village, where we have conducted several workshops. And actually, these two project ideas, they came from villagers themselves, because we
I'm
conducted.
sorry to interrupt, Kanat, but we need to wrap up now. We've got
Okay. Sorry,
only a
yeah,
couple
sorry.
minutes. Thank you very
That's
much.
it basically. Thank you, yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank
Great.
you.
Kanat, if you could stop sharing, and then I'll just put my presentation on with the questions.
Yeah, sure.
I'm seeing that it's almost 3:15. If imagine some people have to leave us because we hadn't really planned to keep longer than that. But I think with our presenters, we can stay on for a few more minutes and then record the answers to these questions, so we can then share them with the participants, even if they have to leave now. Now, let's just take another 10 or so minutes, and then we can wrap it up. I'll just load the slide with the presentation slide. Just the last ones that came in. You should be able to see it now.
Yep, I can see it.
There we go. We covered the first two, so I'll just give the third one to the group. I think it came for Zoya, but maybe Zoya can start, and if the others want to add, they can add to the answer Zoya provides here.
Sorry, Bozil, it was a question for me. Maybe
it came in the chat as a question to you. If you want to take it, if you say that the others should respond to it, feel free to do that. It's this one. Do you think Kyrgyzstan is doing enough in the UNFCCC and other international platforms?
Oh, no, thank you.
I might answer something. Doing enough, you mean like whether there are responsibilities that every country has? For example, we have to submit the report to UNFCCC soon. Actually, this is the fourth report on climate change and greenhouse gas emissions, and it's being prepared at the moment. There were some delays there. So to take this question broader is whether there are, I think, two parts, whether Kyrgyzstan is actually fulfilling their obligations in front of the international community with regard to reporting, and whether we do undertake any kind of initiatives within the country that would decrease, that would mitigate climate change. As for the first one, I would not call it great, but we do, we have submitted the third report to UNFCCC. We're preparing the fourth one. We have regular reports on the state of environment as well, and now the latest one is being prepared as well. Whether we are doing enough within the country, I don't think that we do. We have a framework legislation that actually defines what is energy efficiency and what's renewable energy, but taking renewable energy, the first law on renewable energy came in 2008, and we still do not have a large amount of hydropower or biogas or solar built because there was no secondary legislation base. We are now developing with one of the UN projects. We're working with the State Committee on Energy on developing this secondary legislation. They just do not have the capacity to do it themselves. And this is a huge problem for Kyrgyzstan. And well, it has to be resolved, yeah. So we do not do enough in mitigation climate change, in my opinion. We do some reporting. So we could speed up the process, but for that we need to increase capacity of our government bodies to hire more people like Zoya, Kretova, for example, to hire experts to be on the experts position.
Great, I'm moving to the next slide with 3 more questions. They were addressed specifically to the presenters. The first one is for you, Tatiana.
Yeah, there are 2 for me. Yeah, they're the best option for Kyrgyzstan to develop renewables. I've already answered that in the chat. It depends on where you are. You cannot just say, if we take the whole country and if we have the goal for energy production for the whole country, fine. The first one, the cheapest one, is obviously hydropower. Then solar is more expensive, but also produces electricity. Biogas, also a bit more expensive, can produce electricity, but mostly produces heat and biofertilizer. at where you have the deficit of energy, and you have to look at that place. Which resources do you have? Do you have a river nearby that you can put the small hydropower? If not, look for solar. If not, if you have a large farm nearby, look for biogas. There is no, well, you have to be very specific and tailor your solutions to specific conditions that are existing where you actually need your energy. And whether to online resources, read more about Kyrgyzstan renewable energy potential. We have developed several small books on each of the solar, biogas, even including wind in Kyrgyzstan. And you can find them on greenenergy.kg. I'll put them out. But these are from 2013, and I do realize while I read this question that there is a need for updating this information and actually putting more of it out there, and not just having it in my presentation, but probably having it somewhere to read for you. But so far, I look at greenenergy.kg.
Great. Zoya, the next question. You mentioned some positive parts on the effect of climate change on agriculture. Are there negative impacts on agriculture? Maybe also Kanat can add.
Actually, I already write this answer on this question in the chat, but I can repeat it. So the biggest negative effect on agriculture, again, increasing temperature. Increasing temperature can be like a positive. We can take a positive effect as well as, of course, it's like negative effect because. As I mentioned, during springtime and the beginning of vegetation period, we have lack of precipitation. It's getting dry and dry. And in combination with high temperature and lack of precipitation, the process of evapotranspiration is bigger and bigger. So it's means that everything is getting everything from biota, all forests, trees, bushes, I don't know, soils, getting drier. And of course, it's a biggest negative effect. And in general, over the year, even we have a little bit increasing of precipitation during the year, again, this combination of high temperature, drought. We have a slow process of drought in Kyrgyzstan. A drought, I mean, in everywhere, in the soil, in the air, in the biota. So it's the biggest negative effect as well. So that is all from my side. Božel?
Mojil. So I think we've
the toggle menu at the top didn't come out, so he couldn't really unmute. Kanat, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, just wanted to add on rangelands and cattle, because actually this, as was already mentioned by Zoya, the biggest impact will be on elevated temperature, and this elevated temperature again, in their turn, they will have a negative effect on productivity of the cattle and sheep, for example, because the more heat stress they get in summer, the less productive they will be, of course. And also the precipitation trends are going to decrease during the vegetation season. And again, it will have a negative impact not only on the animal husbandry, but also on the crop agriculture as well, of course. Božel, over to you.
Okay. So I think it's time for us to wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
And
there was three more questions. One was answered. Just maybe very briefly, about 30 seconds or so to give responses to these. I think the second one was for Tatiana. Maybe the first one for everyone. Who wants to jump in on that one about conflicts?
I can. There was a question in terms of energy efficiency in buildings. Do I think it's necessary to update or redesign existing technical regulatory documents? As for the SNP itself, for thermal insulation, the SNP is good enough on thermal insulation only. But of course, there are a lot of technical documents to be developed concerning the energy supply systems, the ventilation systems, all of the systems that are using energy and are used in buildings. There is quite a lot to be developed, you know, the standards here, as you say, technical. There has not been done much work in this area for many years, and it's really a very, an area that we need to work on as soon as possible.
Can I add something regarding SNP?
Yes, go ahead.
So probably everybody knows that among all these huge amount of SNPs, there is one very specific SNP that called climatological buildings. Constructions. So I would like to mention that the last update was made in 2000, and the period, the population was very, very old. It was about 1960 up to 1990. So everybody knows how climate is changed now, especially temperature is growing. So it means that probably heating period getting less. The summer temperature is rising. We have so many heat waves during summertime. So all these calculations should be updated. This is it's very have a huge link with efficiency of building as well. So it's from point of Kyrgyz Hydromet, what should they do as well in order to adapt to climate risks. That's all.
Great, thanks. I see there are two more questions, one on conflicts, and then on the other slide there was one that came in about private sector participation. Using my position as the moderator, I would suggest that we take these home and send them to our presenters, and then they can share in writing a short response to these questions. And I just wanted to wrap it up here and just mention a couple of things for as next steps. We were encouraged to use this opportunity of the webinar and start a discussion within the educational institutions about how climate can be taken up as an additional course. And our colleagues at BARD in the US prepared some teacher's guides, and not only teacher's guides for people who are teaching courses on environment and environmental subjects, but for courses across the board, like history, mathematics, the humanities, and so on. So those of you who are still online and are part of educational institutions teaching courses or students, you can take it up, use this material as an input for a discussion in class or virtual class, and of course come up with a discussion based on some of these questions that our colleagues at BARD have developed, or feel free to use whatever you think is necessary to trigger an interesting discussion at your class. We will share the materials from this webinar, all the recording plus the presentations, and a couple of links to materials that were mentioned in the chat. And we encourage you, to connect. We'll see how we can do that through platform or similar events like the one today. And we are definitely planning a couple of things in the coming months. So stay tuned. We will keep you posted. And if you have any questions, suggestions on how we can take this further, engage, we'd be happy to hear from you. And yeah, let's stay in touch. So with that, I don't know, Seth, if on this slide, you want to mention anything else?
Just one thing on the make climate a class idea. Bojil and I are very interested in connecting with other schools and universities to see if we could launch a collaborative effort to make climate a class all over Kyrgyzstan, in Kyrgyz and Russian, Uzbek, whatever languages are appropriate. It would be very, very helpful to have the entire country, everyone in the country, have a basic understanding of what is climate change and what they, as people living in Kyrgyzstan, can do to adapt and to mitigate climate change. So we're going to be talking to people about working on that challenge.
Great.
Thank you.
I saw that there was a question about how the recording would reach the participants. We received, through your registration, we received your email addresses. So that's the distribution list that we will use to send out the recording of the webinar. But here, just as a final slide, I want to thank you all for your participation, great questions and interest in the topic. Here are our contacts, and let's be in touch and continue this conversation on and offline, hopefully soon again through physical contact. Thanks a lot, and yeah, be safe, stay healthy, and see you again soon.
Thank you, Tatiana, Zoya, Kanat, especially for your presentations, and Bojil for running everything. It's great.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bojil. Yeah, thank you. Very good.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.